Reflective meditation.
Tonight, I'd like to take up what has been called reflective meditation, which has to do really with thought processes. Reflective meditation is rational. And I'll comment, and it may be that in the question period you will have points to raise on this, but I would like to comment right at the outset that one reason for emphasizing this particular category of rational meditation, reflective meditation using thought processes, is that this is particularly adapted to the Western body. And this, I think, we must remember. The Theosophical philosophy, as I'm sure all of you know, suggests the feasibility, the validity of the concept of reincarnation. So that from that point of view, there are incarnations when we have Eastern bodies, there are incarnations when we have Western bodies. Now, I am also convinced that when one is in a Western body, or in an Eastern body, whichever body one is in, as it were, male, female, east, west, whatever, there is a purpose. There is something to be learned from incarnation in that particular body. And therefore, there are techniques, there are disciplines, there are ways of using the body that are particularly well adapted to the type of vehicle one has. And often mistakes are seriously made and difficulties can arise when one attempts to do something that really is not, if we can call it this, the dharma of the physical body that one has. That is the whole purpose of the body which one has. And in the West, we are accustomed to thinking. Thinking is, the rational function is very much emphasized in the West. Then this can be the tool by which we enter into the whole realm of meditation. And we should use it. And I can tell you there are serious cases where this has been forgotten, and either the idea that you can bypass the mind or that we don't need it in some way, and the whole mental process, which includes discrimination, which includes choice, which includes a fine-tuned instrument that is able to look at it and make decisions as to the validity of an experience, of an insight, of an intuition, where that has been set aside and really serious difficulties have arisen. Well, I won't go into the negative aspects, but this broad type of reflective meditation actually is found even in many of the Eastern schools. In some of the formalized meditations of Mahayana Buddhism, it is very much present, very much present. The rational faculty is there. But it is distinguished from what has been called the contemplative intuitive type of meditation. Well, perhaps the simplest form of meditation, and therefore the best to start with, as I say, because it entails something with which we're familiar, thinking. I think we all think. At least something goes on that passes for thinking. We hope we're engaged in it. This entails the ordinary active, although controlled thinking to which the mind is accustomed, is reflective meditation. One aspect of this, which we shall also examine tonight, and I see it as a kind of rising tide, as it were, in which we move in a certain direction and then move out in another direction. We can look at it in various ways, but one aspect that we need to examine involves what has been called receptive meditation. Reflective, receptive. These really are two wings of the same bird that soars, two wings of the bird of meditation. But this should not be thought of as in any way a negative form of meditation. When I say receptive, please do not think of it as negative. Rather, that out of the achievement of reflective meditation, the mind is then held still, poised. We'll try one at the end tonight, see what we can do in a group. But the mind is held still and poised, alert to receive a light on a subject, to catch an inspiration or grasp a new realization. And this might be compared to listening for something which is far away and which therefore demands the mustering of complete attention. So it may be seen that reflective meditation, as I say, consists of two parts, as it were. And we will deal with these so far as we can separate them, although really they are very much one. So to begin then, reflective meditation takes up from the point we have reached in concentration and imagination. These were the preliminary steps: concentration, imagination. A subject is chosen, let us say a quality like serenity. I presume this is a quality we all would like to have. Perhaps this is a quality you already have, so we'll then try another quality. But because I think I need serenity, I come up with this, you see. Let us take this quality of serenity. To reflect upon this, first we concentrate upon it. Then we imagine perhaps a serene lake. And reflect upon it then means to begin to consider everything we can about it, its meaning, its value, its significance, what it is able to bring about. The first requirement in this reflective meditation is to watch the thinking processes. Keep a check on them. Notice immediately if the mind begins to wander, and patiently bring it back to the central theme of serenity, the theme which we have chosen to on which to reflect. We can take courage at the outset. Our minds are likely to wander, don't worry. They generally do. And let's not fool ourselves. Let's be absolutely honest. When the mind begins to wander, bring it back. But we can take courage, I think, from a writer such as Sri Krishna Prem, who has written in the book, The Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. For countless ages, the mind has been turned outwards and has been given a free rein to attach itself to objects of desire. And it is not to be expected that it will be possible to wrench it away from them at once. An understatement, if ever I read one. A bamboo that has long borne a weight will not be straightened merely by its removal. Strenuous effort will be required to neutralize the acquired bend. So it is with the mind. And I think this is a very apt illustration. If you notice a fir tree with a heavy load of snow upon it, when the snow is gone, perhaps the tree still bends, and only gradually does it begin to resume its upright state, doesn't it? And sometimes one sees a wind-swept tree which has moved out, and then life forces it up, and then it moves, then it bends over again, and so on. It's interesting to watch this on a seashore, for example, or on a cliff where the winds sweep by. So here the use of will comes in. And we alluded to this aspect of our subject last week, you will recall. The task before us then involves a steady brooding on the subject, and all aspects of it must be included. The meanings of serenity. What does serenity imply? What is its significance? What are serene circumstances? What does it mean for me to be serene? What is it for the physical body to be serene? What is it for the emotions to be serene? What is meant by a serene mind? All aspects are examined. The implications. Does serenity mean, does this imply that I will not be active in the world? Does serenity imply that I will let people just walk over me? That I will just be a limp dish rag? Does serenity imply a positive state in which I act? What does serenity mean? All of these aspects, you see, of the subject are explored in the reflective meditation. Unless we do that, we're just doing our ordinary thinking. But this is a deeper probing, and we must not permit any jumping to conclusions or one-sided examination. Neither should we permit our thinking to be colored by emotions of any kind. Can we look at this quality impersonally, without involvement in it, unemotionally? Just look at it, examine it, turn it around, you see, in thought. The whole process must be kept under control. Now, the second requirement, this is the first requirement, to keep it under control, to note where the mind goes, and bring it back, keep it around this subject. The second requirement in this type of meditation is persistence. And this is difficult because we're not really noted for being very persistent, except in something we want. Then we become, of course, we say we're persistent, and all of our friends say we're stubborn. So it depends on, who is doing what, you see. I say I am persistent. You may say I'm just being stubborn. But when it comes to something we don't want very much, for example, we may feel that, well, we've worked at this for a week or 2 weeks, By this time, my golly, if we're not serene, we never will be, sort of thing. We've examined it all we can and so on. And we still react. Something comes along and it upsets us and we're not very serene. And so, well, let's let that go. Let's turn to something easier, we say, you see. So the second requirement is persistence. We are apt to think even that we've uncovered all there is to be known about a subject. But we certainly must persist through this phase, which is really a very normal mental reaction. I've discovered everything there is to be known about serenity. I know all about it. Of course, I can't put it into action. Of course, I'm not a very serene person, but I know everything there is to be known about serenity. Well, do we really? Have we really examined it? Let us say, you see, that serenity is our topic. Devote at least a month to this. Sometimes people have been known to devote years to just one quality, because one quality can be the doorway to every other quality, every other aspect of life. Serenity can open the door to love, to courage, to fearlessness, to tact, to all of these qualities that you might be able to list, to discrimination. It can open the door to all of these. So perhaps we could take serenity as the subject of reflective meditation for an entire incarnation, and it would lead you to all of the others. But certainly take something like this for a sufficient length of time. Of course, sometimes after 1 or 2 periods of meditation, we feel there's nothing more to explore, and we're bored with the topic. And this is where there is a normal mental reaction. I want to meditate on something exciting. I'd like to meditate on the chakras. I'd like to meditate on something really exciting that's going to do something, you see. And so we're bored. The mind wants some new feed. It's the horse that's always asking for a new brand of oats to be handed in, sort of, you see. So we want this excitement. Can we persist through this? To re-stimulate attention, it may be useful to read something on the subject. Look it up in the dictionary. Or list some questions on it. Just today I was reading a book that I picked up in a bookstore last evening, and I came on a new idea, for example, with regard to truth. This is just an illustration how sometimes one's reading can enrich a reflective meditation. You see, not that I know all about truth or ever thought I did, but suddenly I had a new insight because I learned that the Greek word for truth, or the word that Plato used in his dialogues for truth, is the Greek word aletheia, which is a not forgetting. Lethe, of course, was the river of forgetfulness that everyone crosses after the end of an incarnation. You may remember the Greek mythology and so on. You get driven, rowed across the river of Lethe. But truth, the word that has been translated as truth, Plato used the term aletheia, a not forgetting, because from the Platonic point of view, truth was the original condition in which consciousness existed. It was the pure state of consciousness, the purity of consciousness. And we think, you see, in the Greek mythology of going across the river Lethe after death, but incarnation is crossing the river Lethe this direction, as it were, you see. And so the not forgetting, to remember, is truth. Well, that cast a whole new light on it for me suddenly. And this is what I mean, that one can read something that re-stimulates attention, and which reflective meditation can then take place. This is just a simple little illustration. It happens to be fresh in my mind because I came upon it this morning. So perhaps we can list some of the questions on the subject that we have chosen for our reflective meditation, to which we'd like to have answers, and take them within and see if we can examine this subject from the point of view of these questions. Reach into the depths of whatever topic is chosen for reflective meditation. After all, this is why we meditate, not just to sit and think, not just to daydream, but to go below the surface, to go into a matter in depth, and to reach that still point of the immortal self which can cast light upon the subject. And that is invited by this kind of reflective state that is induced. And so we probe behind the apparent, and we find out the elements we might otherwise never know were present. No matter how simple the topic that we may have selected for our meditation, if we persist with it, there are always new significances to be discovered and deeper fields of comprehension to be arrived at. There is a kind of apocryphal story within the Theosophical movement of the occasion when, that I say apocryphal because I don't know that it's ever been documented, may be true, maybe not true, but it makes an interesting story of when Dr. Annie Besant, one of the great leaders of the Theosophical Society, a magnificent woman who was involved in a great number of social causes and humanitarian causes, when she learned about the existence of this philosophy, theosophy, through being given the 2 volumes of The Secret Doctrine to review, she said she must know the author, and she went to H.P. Blavatsky, met her, and asked her to teach Dr. Besant how to meditate. And she wanted to learn all of this. She wanted to come at the truth at once, you know. So, will you teach me to meditate? And it is said that H.P. Blavatsky threw a matchbox on the table and said, meditate on that. Now, this is a very ordinary, common object. But what is a matchbox? I don't know what kind this was, but let us say that it was one of these small matchboxes. Can one meditate on a matchbox? Why not? Have you ever thought of the symbolism of the matchbox? It's a rectangle. It has height and depth and dimensions. Perhaps that's the physical body. What's inside the matchbox? Matches. What has to be done with what is inside? It has to be lit. Isn't perhaps within the temple of the physical body is the living spark? Have you ever thought about meditating on a matchbox, you see? Reflect upon it. The symbolism is tremendous. Who lights the match? You do. You have to do it. Nobody else is going to do it, you see, when that's given to you. So you must light the spark within. And what more beautiful symbol than the fire burning within because you have lit it? Well, there are all sorts of things one can meditate on, and everything is given. The matchbox usually has on the side of it a little rough abrasive part, so that the capacity for the match to come alight is there as part of the box. You say, everyone can go on with the symbolism, all kinds of things. I don't know that this is what happened, but it seemed to me that there is much in any object to reflect upon. Every object in the universe is symbolic in some way. It is a symbol. Every word is a symbol. The word serenity is not the quality serenity, it is a symbol of that. So think of it. How does it sound? You say, tranquility and so on. Think of these things and examine them. And this is what is meant by reflective meditation. In his very excellent book on meditation, Concentration and Meditation is the title of it, Christmas Humphreys, who of course is a great Buddhist scholar and has written extensively on Buddhism and the Buddhist way of life and Buddhist meditation and so on, has described 7 types of reflective meditation. And these are very interesting to note. On passing through the bodies, and we're going to try a little bit of this, on things as they really are. This is a marvelous type of reflective meditation. Meditation on things as they really are. Not as we wish them to be, as we think they are, or we think they ought to be, as they were yesterday or last year, or anything of that sort, but on things as they are. On dispassion, on motive, on the doctrines of religion, on the self, and on analogy. And these are very interesting to follow, these 7 types. But in each case, whatever type is followed, the period of reflection is followed by the creation, if it is true reflection. Now, this is not just idly thinking about it, matchboxes and serenity and whatnot, you see. But the period of reflection, if it is truly reflection, is followed by the creation of an unimpeded channel between the physical brain and the higher or inner self, the true self. The creation of this channel, which permits of a divine outpouring. It is as though we open a channel through the reflective meditation, inwards, which permits a downpouring of light, a kind of infusion of new insight understanding. And this period of outpouring has often been called the time or the state of receptive meditation. This is why I say this is the other wing of the bird of meditation. This is really, however, a very difficult practice, for it takes us into the precincts, of course, of abstract meditation and represents a kind of leap from reflection to what some Buddhist schools call a state of no mindfulness, in which one has used the mind to set aside thought, and in that stilled condition created the channel, building the bridge to the higher self, which permits an influx of light. Meister Eckhart in the Christian tradition illustrates this beautifully in many of his writings, this interior reception which comes about at this stage. Now the problem is certain dangers are attached to this condition of meditation, for the human mind is already exposed to so many, countless thought currents, impressions, impacts of various kinds, and care must be taken that a state of negativity is not entered into, that we're not talking about a state which permits free access to the mind by all these countless impressions, that this does not take over. So in one sense, our goal is right receptivity. Now this is very difficult to define, but this is where a lot of people, I think, and I've seen it. We get letters about it, and I've talked to people in my travels around the world, mostly are here in the United States, who have jumped at once into this kind of receptive meditation without reflection. And it has turned into a negative condition in which there was no longer any control over what was being received, and consequently no discrimination, and everything that came through. It's like rather than being able to turn on your radio to a precise band, you could turn the radio knob and all of the radio waves were present at once. Do you know what I mean? You see? Everything is present at once. Whatever stations were broadcasting, you hear them all together. And you're not able to distinguish then between one and another, nor are you able to evaluate. On one there may be some advertising for spaghetti, and on another there may be some beautiful Mozart, and on another there may be a lecture on higher mathematics, and so on. And you will give all of these equal value, you see. And this is what comes to happen if receptive meditation is not the result of reflective meditation, in which the thought processes are controlled, stilled, but controlled, so that you can select, as it were, and give some discrimination to what is impinging on the mind. This is what I mean by our goal is right receptivity. In one sense, of course, the very recognition of the sea of impacts which is all about us, buffeting us, protects us. This very recognition that there is this going on. We're all the time, you right now are being buffeted by my thoughts, you see. It's hard to close me out, in a sense. You do, momentarily, and maybe even more than momentarily, while you go off into your own thought realm, and then suddenly you're buffeted by some word I say, some thought I send out, and so on, you see. But we're all the time being buffeted. And in some sense, this is a protection to us, for it is helpful to realize the endless stream of impressions to which we are exposed, subtly and unconsciously, as well as consciously. And knowing this, therefore, we should be on our guard against mass influences that are constantly impinging. And this is happening all the time. Just get into a mass of people, a crowd of people, where there's excitement, haranguing going on. And immediately you're caught up in it, aren't you? You're aware of it. Walk into a group of people in a church who are praying. It's easier for you to pray, isn't it? It's much easier in that atmosphere. All of the time this is about us. The mass influences are constantly impinging. Well, of course, there are very subtle currents from many different sources. Psychic impressions, for example. In this state of receptivity, we may be buffeted by all kinds of psychic impressions. And this is where it is all too easy to make mistakes, not knowing if our thinking is our own or is influenced by some extraneous source, not being able to distinguish whether an impression is of a truly spiritual origin or simply a psychic distortion we have picked up on the astral world, on the way inwards, as it were. Well, there are really no quick and easy answers to this situation, I'll tell you right now. But the solution really lies in developing our own strong center of awareness from which we can look out on the subjective as well as the objective worlds. So we have to recognize that there's a hairline division between an over-positive attitude and one that is too negative, between action and stillness, between mental creativity and a passive absorption. Again, if I can quote Sri Krishna Prem in the Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita, essentially, he says, the method consists of gaining such control over the mind processes that they can be stilled at will. thus enabling the consciousness to perceive the truth like a calm lake reflecting the eternal stars. The state, he continues, is not one of mental vacuity, as represented by some critics, and still less is it one which is produced by some occult mechanism or other. The center of consciousness withdraws its attention from the world of outer phenomena, whether of sense or of thought, passes through the central point, which is itself, and emerges in the spiritual world of the buddhi, intuition. Now, this is the process. Very easy to write about, you see, very difficult to achieve. Paul Brunton, in his work, The Wisdom of the Overself, makes very much the same point. Mere mental quiet is an excellent thing as a step on the upward way, but it is not true transcendence. The mental blank, wrote Brunton, which is so often the absorption state of ordinary yogis, is not the same as the self-understood awareness, which is the absorption state of the philosophic yogi. The diffuse, drifting negativity of the first is inferior to and different from the discriminating, intelligent alertness of the second. The one merely refrains from thinking. The other actively engages the thought-free consciousness in understanding its own nature. I've always loved that phrase, the thought-free consciousness, because this is what we're talking about, the thought-free consciousness. So the state of receptive meditation is a state of positive listening, and for this an effort of will is necessary. The very setting up of a point of silence invites a flood of sensations or impressions or images to invade our privacy, and the best technique is not to fight them, but to let them play on the periphery of consciousness, as it were, without giving them attention. The holding of this state is sometimes helped, indeed, by repeating some word or phrase, evoking some image. For example, with serenity, evoke the image of a still lake, or repeat the phrase, "Be still and know that I am God." This kind of mental repetition does begin to clear the area of consciousness, as it were, from these impressions, external impressions. An analogy here might be helpful to us. It's been used by some writers. A searchlight directed by someone on earth upon objects in the sky. In reflective meditation, the searchlight is sent out horizontally, as it were, sweeping across the field of consciousness, correlating, formulating, interpreting, seeing more clearly everything in its domain. And in receptive meditation, having seen the whole field, the light is directed upwards, scanning the depths of the sky and permitting what is hidden in the very depths to be revealed. So in the opening of this channel, through positive receptive listening, what may we expect to receive? Well, I think we can say very simply, new insights which can transform our lives. Above all, we must be sure about the nature of the insight that comes to us. And so I suggest the main criterion, and I am convinced the one that is absolutely the most valid criterion in testing the source of the insight or intuition that comes to us, whatever you wish to call it, is its impersonality. This is the absolute key, it seems to me, to determining whether the source is indeed one's own immortal self. From that level of selfhood is its impersonality. Messages that boost the personality, that flatter and hold high promise, I think are immediately suspect. Don't listen to them. Immediately suspect. Messages that are separative, divisive, personal in any way. And so to me, the one clear criterion, now there are others of course, but the one clear one is its impersonality. Another point, of course, do not be discouraged. The searchlight may point up and it may seem that the sky is black indeed and nothing comes down, as it were. The results of meditation, of course, do not always occur at once. In fact, they may not occur ever in some sense. It depends on what you're looking for when you say results of meditation. What are you looking for? The real results are not in terms of any messages from on high, intuitions, insights that flood the mind and stir the heart. The real results of meditation are the eventual transformation, the transforming possibilities of whatever happens, the transformation of the personality. And this, after all, is the goal of meditation, the goal of yoga, the goal of all spiritual evolution, to transform the personality. Before trying a meditation that involves reflection and receptivity, I'd like to briefly sketch what may be involved in this type of meditation as related, for example, to the meditation on the nature of the self, one of the 7 types that Christmas Humphreys mentions in his book on concentration and meditation. We all know or think we know something about ourselves, don't we? You think you know yourself fairly well. We perceive ourselves as both subject and object, don't we? I can talk about myself as though it were out there, but I also have, I can observe myself, and I also am the observer that is doing the observing. But the self is really a mystery, isn't it? And so we are to undertake an examination of the self of which one is aware. Now one can couple this then with the meditation on passing through the bodies and say, for example, I, that is my real I am not my physical body. And we look at this, we reflect on it, we analyze it. I am not my physical body. I am not my emotions. I am not my mental processes. What then am I? What is the self? And we can then open up in our reflection. What is the self? It is in this body. It has some relation to it. It is in everybody. It is universal. It is particular. It is all, everywhere, and so on. We can go on in this way. So trying this and coupling it, therefore, with visualization, concentration, and imagination into reflective meditation and then receptive meditation, I'd like now to try, if you will join me, in this kind of meditation on the nature of the self. So let us relax, sit easily, however you wish, comfortably. Breathe naturally. Take a deep breath and let it out so that there is a full relaxation. The vehicles are aligned. Now imagine a closed lotus bud. It is tightly closed. Visualize it. Concentrate on it. Visualize the shape of the bud, resting on its broad green leaves on the water. Picture the smooth texture of its petals, the closely folded form. Now visualize the bud opening slowly, revealing petal after petal as the flower opens wider. See its full beauty emerging, its golden center radiating in the sun. Now hold this picture of the open lotus with a sense of joy and admiration. Recognize the lotus as a symbol of inner growth, unfoldment, and expansion, and reflect on the correspondence between the self and the open lotus. Let go the symbol of the lotus. The self is one. Listen to the self. Now let the light of the self flow down into the mind as the sun warms the lotus. And let that light spread out flooding the whole personality. Emotions, thought, body harmonized in the light. Fold the lotus into a bud and return to the brain consciousness.
Drop a like, leave a comment,
and don't forget to subscribe.